Hey everyone, welcome. So today we're going to dive into something pretty fascinating. It's this idea that something as simple as how we group things, like fruits and vegetables, can actually reveal these huge, profound differences in how entire cultures see the world. It's pretty wild. All right, let's just jump right in with a question for you. Is a papaya a fruit or a vegetable? I mean, seems pretty simple, right? You probably have an answer right on the tip of your tongue. But what if I told you the answer isn't nearly as straightforward as you might think?
See, in some parts of the world, like the Philippines, the answer you'll often get is just, it depends. And that one little phrase, it cracks open this massive gulf between two totally different ways of thinking about, well, pretty much everything.
And look, this isn't just some quirky trivia about a tropical fruit. No, this is way bigger. It's like a window into how our culture actually shapes the boxes we put things in, the very categories we use to make sense of reality.
Okay, so this whole thing really breaks down into two completely different ways of thinking. On one hand, you've got what's called conceptual grouping. This is super common in Western cultures. It's all about fixed scientific definitions. So botanically, a papaya is a fruit. That's it. End of story. But then you have functional grouping, and here it's all about context and use. So a green papaya that you chop up and put in a savory soup, well, it's acting like a vegetable. But a ripe, sweet papaya you eat for dessert, that's a fruit. The label, the category, it literally changes based on what the thing does. And this whole functional versus conceptual split, it goes so much further than the produce aisle. I mean, we're talking about something that shapes entire worldviews. It influences how people perceive everything, from medicine all the way to the spiritual world. Let's take a cross, for example. From a conceptual viewpoint, it's a symbol of faith. But from a functional viewpoint, it could be seen as a talisman, an object that's believed to have real power, to offer actual protection. The power isn't in what it symbolizes, it's in what it actively does for the person wearing it. And you can see how this worldview has a massive impact on something as critical as medicine. Think about it. A patient might go to a doctor to get a pill for their physical symptoms, but then also go to a faith healer to deal with what they believe is the real, spiritual cause of the sickness. In this way of seeing things, the physical and the spiritual, they're not separate worlds at all. They're completely, totally intertwined. This kind of functional logic even pops up in how we read ancient texts. Here's a classic one. Is a whale a fish? I mean, scientifically, we all know it's a mammal. But in the biblical story of Jonah, it's called a great fish. Why? Well, because in that context, its function, swimming around in the sea and swallowing a person, that's what a fish does. It's grouped by its job in the story. Or how about this one? How long is 3 days? We're probably thinking, okay, 72 hours, right? But in the Jewish context of the Gospels, any part of a day counts as a full day. So Friday afternoon, all of Saturday, and Sunday morning, boom, that's 3 days. The definition is totally functional, not strictly mathematical. So, okay, if the very boxes we put the world into are this different, what on earth happens when these two worldviews try to talk to each other? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. To get our heads around this, we need to look at a key concept from social anthropologist Dr. Melba Padilla-Magay. The word is paiwatig. It's a Filipino term, and it describes this incredibly rich system of hints, subtle cues, and indirect messages all woven into communication. It's basically the art of saying something without saying it directly. And this idea fits into a bigger anthropological framework. You have low-context cultures, pretty common in the West, where communication is expected to be direct. The meaning is right there in the words. You say what you mean. Then you have high-context cultures, common in places like Asia, where it's the opposite. The meaning is often implicit. It's found in the shared context, in gestures, and a lot of times, the real message is in what's left unsaid. And this brings us to a really critical point in Dr. Magay's work. In the Philippines, the entire rulebook for communication can just flip, depending on one thing. Are you talking to an ibang tao, that's an outsider? Or are you talking to a Dina ibang tao, which means not an outsider, or basically one of us? And wow, the difference is huge. When you're talking to an outsider, the conversation is really formal and indirect, maybe even a bit flowery. The whole point is this process of contexting, just trying to figure out who you are and where you fit. But the moment you become an insider, everything changes. The goal is now to deepen the relationship. The language gets direct and plain spoken, and that's when you finally get to see someone's true color. So you're probably asking, how do you become an insider? Well, it's not a switch you flip, it's a journey. This scale of social intimacy shows the path. You start with simple courtesy, pakikatongo, then you move to socializing and participation, climbing all the way up through camaraderie until you finally reach mutual trust, pakikipalayangan, and then total unity. It's a whole process of earning your spot as one of us. Now, this intense focus on relationship and context, it's not random. It's actually deeply rooted in history. It connects directly to this huge cultural shift that happened when societies moved from being primarily oral to becoming literate, based on the printed word. Yeah, thinkers like Marshall McLuhan pointed this out. These aren't just different ways of talking to each other, they're literally different ways of thinking. Oral cultures, they tend to think in a way that's more experiential, relational, and simultaneous. But literate cultures, shaped by the structure of the printed page, encourage more abstract, linear, sequential thought. And the key takeaways here isn't that one is better than the other. It's that the very tools we use to communicate, our media, fundamentally shape how our minds are wired to work. Okay, so we've gone on this pretty wild ride, haven't we? All the way from papayas to deep communication theory. But now for the most important part. Let's turn that lens back around and really reflect on our own worldview. So here's something to really chew on. If you're trying to explain a big, complex idea, let's say something about your faith or your values, to someone who comes from a functional grouping culture, how would you even do it? Just listing off a bunch of abstract principles? That's probably not going to connect. Maybe you need to focus on what that idea does in a person's life. And here's another one. What happens when a culture that's all about the individual meets one that's all about the group? Think about singling someone out for praise or for blame. That can have totally different, maybe even disastrous consequences when the group is what matters most, not the single person. Ultimately, all of this, it boils down to one absolutely crucial point. It's not just what you say that matters, it's who you are to the person who's listening. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. What does it actually take to cross that line from being an outsider to an insider? And how does that journey change absolutely everything about how we connect and how we truly understand one another?